Ladies and gentlemen, this RedGamer.com video has been further evidence that video games do not actually cause real-life violence. In other words, there is no correlation or link. In September, you may remember, there was researchers at the Villanova University and Rutgers University, and they published a very in-depth study, and this suggested that video games do not lead to increases in real-world violent behaviours. So now there's been a follow-up series of studies, and these are being conducted by the Stetson University researcher Christopher Ferguson. And he's come to the very same general conclusion, finding that there is very little evidence which basically would link a video game or movie violence and real-world violence. So in other words, your slaying of clowns in Grand Theft Auto or your love of shooting someone in Call of Duty is not really an indicator that you are naturally homicidal. I know, that's a shock, isn't it? I know, I'm pretty astounded by it myself. But anyway, so this was actually reported in Medical Daily, and Ferguson's studies found that in actuality, the rise in popularity of video game violence is actually, well, resulting in a decrease in youth violence. So what he did was, for his initial study, his first study, he measured homicide rates from between 1920 to 2005 against basically the graphic nature of violence in popular movies. He did find, and I quote, a very slight link. Now this happened for movies and murder rates during the mid-20th century. However, as time progressed and society just was like, oh okay then, basically by the 90s, this connection lessened substantially. And now we're in a period where movie violence doesn't actually seem to be doing anything. In fact, it actually appears to be lessening real-world violence. Now, there was a second study he conducted, and this is more, of course, akin to our subject matter. And this study was video game violence. So he looked at entertainment rating software boards, ESRB data for games released between 1996 and 2011. In other words, fairly recent titles to more retro titles. So I'm sure he's got a bit of Mortal Kombat 2 in there, and he should do. It's a pretty cool game. Anyway, there is a strong correlation, and this strong correlation is actually indicative of declines in instance of youth violence for those who are actually playing it. In other words, as a title is being released and youths are actually enjoying that title, it's been found in the study that shock and horror, it's actually not causing real-life violence. In fact, Ferguson has said in a statement, society has a limited number of resources and attention to devote to the problem of reducing crime. There is a risk that identifying the wrong problems, such as media violence, may distract society from pressing concerns such as poverty, education, and vocational disparities and mental health. This research may help society focus on issues that really matter and avoid devoting unnecessary resources to the pursuit of moral agencies with little practical value. I emphasize this with such glee, it is ridiculous because I've had one of those days. This is actually kind of funny because earlier this year, 2014, just in case you're watching this in some far-flung galaxy, Gamasutra actually found out that the proposed research by the White House into possible links between video game violence and gun violence, yeah, they just didn't really happen. They never occurred. They weren't real. And instead, it was a kind of a photo op to prove that government was listening to mainstream media. And, well, that's a terrible idea. Don't do that, government. Stop. No, you're still doing it. Stop. There you go. Profit. In other words, look, we all know that correlation doesn't necessarily doesn't imply causation. So in other words, just because two pieces of data are linked, it doesn't necessarily mean that one is the cause. In other words, it could be that you eat breakfast and you happen to drive, and therefore you share the same data as someone else that eats breakfast and happens to drive. The difference is they're a mass murderer. Does the fact that you enjoy tasty breakfast in the morning and happen to drive a car for convenience, does that mean that you're a murderer? No. Well, possibly. I don't know my audience. I'm only teasing. But realistically here, what this evidence shows is that it's not necessarily, it's very easy to pinpoint studies, and I do think that this is going to be studied ad nauseum, but it just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I personally never believe that violence was caused through video games, because I gotta tell you, I live in England and we've done some pretty shitty stuff. We've got these things such as, witch trials and world wars and invasions and God knows what else that has happened. And of course, pretty much every country is guilty of something, and society as a whole has always been fairly violent. And I think now we are becoming a little bit more civilized. And I don't personally believe my happening to enjoy shooting something in Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty, or my love of playing Final Fantasy and smashing something with Cloud's Buster Sword, means that I'd like to do it in real life. On the other hand, possibly if you've ever been shopping on a Sunday afternoon and the store's about to close, you might. But that's a different topic. That's real life that's causing the rage, not video game rage. But on a very serious note here, and I do mean this very serious for a moment, the fact of the matter is, let's just be totally honest. This is going to be debated in the media for quite some time because it's an easy subject to demonize. It is. It's like, oh look, someone's lost his head in Mortal Kombat. Well, that's great to go crazy over, isn't it? It's a very easy subject matter to pick on. It's the same as pretty much movies and everything else. And I have issues, to be honest, with the whole sex and gender and everything else in video games as well. It's becoming to the point where, quite frankly, a lot of the stuff should just be easy to discuss and very. I think basically we just kind of need to take video games a little bit more. I think we just need to take games more as a form of entertainment, and rather than trying to place society's problems and issues onto one form of entertainment. Because let's face it, everything has been blamed. There was bloody metal music back in the 80s, and of course now rap's being demonized. You've got bloody video games, movies, and everything else. I mean, look when swearing first became a thing in movies, and everyone went crazy over it. And then Mortal Kombat, when someone got his spine pulled out, it became a whole thing. And has it really affected anyone? No, not really. At least according to the studies. And even those that are demonizing video games, there's yet to be any real evidence. I'm sure that people will still continue to demonize video games for quite some time, to be totally honest. I'm pretty sure at this point you can have every study in the world and the media would still attack it, because it's still very easy to. That's the problem. And this goes to gamer mentality, and that's kind of a different topic, and I don't want to stray and verge too much into it. But with all of the anger and rage that's going on at the moment with the whole Gamersgate situation and so on, it's actually kind of funny that that's doing more harm to video games than the actual violence of the video games themselves. In other words, that's kind of playing into the media. So maybe we should all take that into account as well. But as I said, I personally don't believe that has anything to do with video games as a whole. I think people just like to defend their point up to the hilt. And that's kind of how it is. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.